Tired of long waits and rushed care at the ER and urgent care clinic? Next time, stay home and let Dispatch Health bring the power of the hospital to you.
I call Dispatch Health. A care team of medical professionals actually come to your house.
They're the same caliber of people that you would see if you were at a hospital or an urgent care.
Dispatch Health can treat most non-life-threatening emergencies.
They can do the x-rays, they can do stitches,
Urinary tract infections, blood test, urinalysis, ultrasound.
it's almost everything that they can do at the ER.
You never feel rushed. They're there for you and only you.
I felt like their only patient.
And it costs no more than a trip to urgent care because Dispatch Health is covered by most insurance, including Medicare. See if we serve your home at dispatchhealth.com.
Dispatch Health really went above and beyond.
It's wonderful to have care come to your home.
House calls are back, and they're better than ever. Learn more at dispatchhealth.com.
Drew and Jonathan Scott here to tell you that American Family Insurance wants to protect your dreams. So whether you're at home singing in the shower,
every note,
or prefer singing your heart out in the car like Drew,
cruising,
you can save up to 23% when you bundle your home and auto insurance with American Family Insurance. Get a quote or find an agent at amfam.com. Insure carefully, dream fearlessly.
Visit amfam.com to learn how discounts may apply to you. American Family Mutual Insurance Company, SI, and its operating company, 6000 American Parkway, Madison, Wisconsin.
Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
It's Jonas Nader Day on the pod, everybody. Oh yeah, I know you've been waiting for this one. There are very few analysts out there that, number one, I've worked with as long as Jonas, which is saying something because he's at another website. Jonas, of course, at Roto World, NBC Sports Edge. But, basically from the very first day, almost, that I wrote an email to Aaron Brewski when he started Hoop Ball, and I said, hey, how do I get into this? And he was like, let's do a blurb shift. And I did one. Then he was like, what do you do for a living? And I was like, I'm a play-by-play broadcaster. And he was like, I have an idea. It was within, a matter of months after that I met Jonas. We did the real big three with the ITL guys. Boggs, we're looking at you. Missed that show. And then we've been doing stuff together ever since. So you know a fun one's coming up here today on Fantasy NBA Today. That, of course, the name of the show. I am your host, Dan Bespris. As I always do, I ask you to please follow me on Twitter at Dan Bespris, DanBesbris. I've been doing some little tweet threads last couple of days just to kind of, get into the flow of things. So hopefully you guys are following and you've been able to enjoy some of those. We've gone over some old guys in the early rounds. We went over the first rounders. I'm not going to do everything by Tweetstorm right now. I think right at this time of year actually is more useful for me to be doing it on a podcast. I've been thinking it through, and it's hard to put into concise tweets all of the thoughts there are. So most of it's going to stay here on the podcast. But, of course, we got Jonas coming up in a couple of minutes. He has his breakdown on the mock draft. He has some really interesting names on his team. Some very interesting late round selections. You're not going to want to miss those. Also on today's show, a little bit of breaking news on the Sports Ethos side. Aaron Brewski has completed the Points League rankings. So projections, category league projections for every player, and Points League rankings. Now, all of that in the Fantasy Pass or the Draft Guide, or both. The Draft Guide is actually in the Fantasy Pass. You do not have to get one of the big subscriptions now to get access to the projections and the Points League rankings. The only thing that those don't have at this moment is the Brewski 150, but we're in countdown mode because at midnight on Friday night, so Friday night, Saturday morning, 12:01 a.m. on Saturday, the Brewski 150 goes into the Fantasy Pass as well. So head to sportsethos.com, get yourself a Fantasy Pass today. It is just $5.99 a month. $5.99 a month for the season-long subscription. That's crazy. You got to get it. There are thousands of you listening to this podcast, and I know at least a handful of you would be really well served to have Brew's personal projections. These were not created by the Sports Ethos staff. These are from Aaron Brewski himself. He does the projections. He does the points league ranks, auction ranks. Those are coming shortly. And, of course, the B150 going into your Fantasy Pass in about 2.5 days from right now. So that is awesome. Big news over at Sports Ethos on the draft season prep front. But without further ado, it's guest time on the show. Let's jump into it. The man who needs no introduction, but I'll give him one anyway. One of my oldest buddies in the fantasy community, Jonas Nader. Man, it's so good to talk to you again. Jonas, what's up, dude?
What's up, man? I love talking to you, Dan. Always have.
I know.
One of the nicest guys in the industry. I absolutely love it.
Oh, I know. We used to do so many more things together, and we can, because he's not here, we can just blame him. I think you know whose fault that is, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. We will not say his name.
No, we'll say it. Come on, Boggs. Where are you at, Boggs? I miss that dude, too.
Yeah.
What do you think we have to do to get those guys back into basketball?
I don't know. I guess their teams have to be good again.
Oh! Right? That was amazing. I am definitely tagging them on this. That's going straight to Pogman's inbox. At Jonas Nader on Twitter. He is, of course, over at NBC Sports Edge, also known for so many years as Roto World. Are you guys, like, sort of kind of Roto World again?
Yeah, we're transitioning back to Roto World.
Yes!
It's a slow transition. So, yeah, it's going to be... I'm excited about it. I've always loved the name Roto World. It's nostalgic, so absolutely excited with the decision, obviously.
It's what we all grew up on.
Yep.
It's what we grew.
Absolutely.
It's where I mean, when I got into fantasy in 2001, it was my freshman year of college, actually. So I was 18, and like I didn't know Roto World existed my first year. My first league was on CBS Sportsline, and I don't know how we ended up there. All I know is that they let you make team names with as many characters as you wanted, and that was wonderful. And the next year they started to charge for leagues. We found Yahoo. I found Roto World. I was reading Doc. Like that was the start. And then Brew was right after that. That's abandoning that name was wild. I'm so glad you guys are Roto World. Also because as a podcaster, it was really difficult for me to get NBC Sports Edge right. I screwed it up at least 50%.
Yeah. When I first found Roto World, I remember reading Doc's waiver wire, and then I remember reading Brewski's like 10,000 word doses, which were awesome. So
the breakdown.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh man, that was great. That was like, man, college I had a lot of free time. So the Brewski breakdown was awesome because I was like, oh yes, I've got like 45 minutes to read about fantasy sports. Yep. Let's do this thing. And now you work with Doc, I work with Brew, and we do get to do some pods together. I'm really going to try hard and I want everybody to know that's listening that if Jonas isn't on the show often this year, it is 100% my fault and not yours. Because you are nothing but available and ready to go. And every time I'm like, I'm going to do this. And then I look at my schedule, I'm like, crap, I got to be here at this time. I got to be here at this time. Oh no, the kid is screaming. And I'm back. And you also have 2 children who we're pretty close in age, actually, to my kids. So we managed to find a time that worked today. Yep. And you, sir, have, I don't know, I mean, this is like the old Conan O'Brien bit where every time at the beginning of a show, he's like, we got a great show for you tonight. And then sometimes he leans in and goes, it's not that great of a show. Jonas, you might actually have the most interesting draft in this industry mock.
I think so, yeah.
And that's saying something. You have this balance of like a few Dan Besbris style guys in there. Like the guy who's probably the logo for the old man squad you got in the 8th round. And you've got some really interesting young guys. And the young guys you drafted are also young guys I kind of like a little bit, with 1 or 2 exceptions. But come on, I can't like every young player. That's not my brand. So let's get this thing started. Jonas, you were out of the 10 hole, and you went LaMelo Ball. And I think the only question there was, why LaMelo? Why not Harden or, I don't know, Trey or Cat? Those were kind of the 4 I assume you were picking from at that point.
Right. So I took a long look at those guys that you mentioned, and I was just like, you know what? Harden looked cooked last year, right? He didn't look good at all. He still had a good season in terms of fantasy. And then I looked at Trae Young, and I'm like, LaMelo is Trae Young with more steals, right? A little bit more efficient. I considered Cat. Looking back, I honestly may have gone Cat here. Like, I could talk myself into Cat over LaMelo right now. But I just went Ball because getting point guards is so hard. And then I realized I took 3 in the first 3 rounds. But hey,
it's a mock.
It's
whatever.
a mock. I'm trying to experiment with something. So.
Yeah.
The only concern I have about LaMelo, though, this is actually a fun stat. So 134 of his assists last year were to Miles Bridges.
Oh.
And he's gone. So
oh, no.
He's now working with Mason Plumlee and PJ Washington. There are no lob threats there. So a bit concerning, I'll say. I don't think he has as good of a season as he did last year, but at 10, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Your second round pick was maybe a little more controversial. I don't know. This is where he's going.
Right.
I keep going back and forth on this one. This is going to be one of those guys. It's Kyrie Irving, by the way, just so folks know who we're talking about. I literally every single day I flip back and forth between being willing to draft him in the early second round. I think maybe I just kind of hoped he was going to be a later second rounder this year. And after last season, I'm kind of amazed that he's going as early as he is, even if it's accurate, even if it's right. It just seemed like he was going to go later, and I can't get over that mental hurdle to take him a lot of the time, even though we know he's like a top 5 per game kind of dude. So if you're taking him here, I assume, Jonas, the logic is you're expecting like low 60s to mid 60s games out of him, and that would get him to his ADP by totals, yeah?
Yeah. So keep in mind, he is probably the most fresh player in the NBA.
It's a good point.
Honestly, last year he basically had half the year off. He's been very healthy, actually, for the past couple of years as well. And if you look at the players that are getting drafted around him, they all have huge question marks, but not a single one has his per minute upside, right? Except for maybe a Kawhi, who will play 55 games at most. So I felt very confident taking Kyrie here. And look, the guy has finished 5th, 3rd, 6th, and 9th per game in his last 4 years.
Yeah.
He has a ton to prove this year. He's on a contract year. This is going to be when he secures the biggest payday of his career next summer, right? So this is his year. He said it at media day. He looks the most engaged I've ever seen Kyrie. Like, he has a point to prove this year. Kevin Durant has been saying all the right things as well. They're meshing well with Ben Simmons. They're going out to dinner. Like, don't bet on my advice or anything, but if I was a betting man, and I'm not, I would take the Nets to win the championship if I was betting today.
Ooh, that's a warm take.
Yep.
That's warm.
Lukewarm.
Yeah.
Lukewarm.
So the only problem I have with any of that is that you're relying on logic to make a decision on Kyrie Irving. Yes. And we've seen that doesn't always apply with him. But that's why I keep going back and forth, because all of the things you said are 100% true. He needs to play well this year, and he needs to play in basketball games where he is physically able to play in them to get that big contract. And all of that's like, yes, any reasonable human being would be like, I have an opportunity to make $200 million, and all I have to do is show up to work for 1 year. But it's Kyrie, and who the hell knows what's going to happen.
And you probably agree with me. This is the worst second round in fantasy basketball history.
Dude, like the first Yahoo board had a bunch of interesting stuff, and now everything is mushed together to where it actually pretty strongly resembles the early second round last year, where you're choosing between injury-prone dudes with big per-game upside. You're like, all right, well, I'm going to roll the dice, and one out of these 5 injury-prone, high-upside guys is probably going to hit. Maybe 2, maybe 3. Last year it was 0, which sucks. I mean, usually one of them comes through, but I don't know. I mean, it could be Kyrie, it could be AD, it could be Braun, it could be Kawhi. Paul George he went at the end of the second round here, but he's actually been trending up for whatever reason. He's kind of in that discussion as well.
Tired of long waits and rushed care at the ER and urgent care clinic? Next time, stay home and let Dispatch Health bring the power of the hospital to you.
I call Dispatch Health. A care team of medical professionals actually come to your house.
They're the same caliber of people that you would see if you were at a hospital or an urgent care.
Dispatch Health can treat most non-life-threatening emergencies.
They can do the x-rays, they can do stitches.
Urinary tract infections, blood test, urinalysis, ultrasound.
It's almost everything that they can do at the ER.
You never feel rushed. They're there for you and only you.
I felt like their only patient.
And it costs no more than a trip to urgent care because Dispatch Health is covered by most insurance, including Medicare. See if we serve your home at dispatchhealth.com.
Dispatch Health really went above and beyond.
It's wonderful to have care come to your home.
House calls are back, and they're better than ever. Learn more at dispatchhealth.com.
I've been doing fantasy for a decade now, and it's just changed so much because like 10 years ago, you didn't have to worry about it. But nowadays, you have players missing 15 games and not blinking an eye. You know what I mean? They can be totally healthy, and they can sit 15 times, and this is why I still think the 82-game season and within the next 5 years will be cut significantly.
They got to do something because I think the average number of games played for anybody in the top 150 last season, fantasy-wise, was like 68 and change.
Yep.
You're 100% right. The Bucks have no goal at all of having their guys play more than 70 games. I mean, I think all three of their stars played, was it 68 or 69 each of them
Something
last
like
year?
that, yeah. And reducing the games too and make the games more interesting, right?
Make it more valuable.
Meaning to each game.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, but money and all that, ticket revenue and so forth. I mean, look, the same discussion could be had for a 162-game baseball season. That's just, there's no planet where you need 162 games to decide who's a better team than someone else. That's so many. But whatever, at least while we got it, we can enjoy 82 regular season games and play fantasy with them. Third round pick, Darius Garland. This is another interesting one because we don't still really know where he's going to go kind of post Donovan Mitchell acquisition. He's bouncing all over the board. I assume you like where you got him here. So maybe small hit with Donovan in town?
Yeah. So I had Garland initially as a borderline top 15 player, and now I'm getting him at a full round discount. I wanted Evan Mobley, I will say that, but I wanted to see where Mobley went. So I kind of use this as a little bit of an
I like it.
Yep. I really wanted Mobley, but I wanted to see where he went so we could see where the market set him. But yeah, I love Garland, especially at this price. We've already heard Bickerstaff say that they are going to stagger him and Donovan Mitchell at all times. So there will be one of the other, on the court at all times. So that's about 12 minutes without each other. So that kind of gives me a little bit of more optimism, I would say. And this is a guy that can get you 20 points, 9 assists, a steal, about 3 triples. So like on elite efficiency, and just I think it was third or fourth year, I'm all in on Garland in the third round. I think that's a steal.
You know what's funny is that before the trade, I don't think I was going to end up with either Garland or Mitchell. My hope then when the trade happened was maybe one or both of them would get pushed too far down the board. You saw that a little bit with DeJounte Murray. He's bounced back now, but there was that weird stretch like a month and a half ago where he was getting drafted in the late 20s, and you're like, okay, well, that's we've gone too far the other direction here. I actually ended up with Donovan Mitchell in this mock draft. He fell to the middle of the fourth round. I'm thinking, all right, like at this point, he wasn't a guy I'm targeting, but like I'll go that way. And so I think that's a little bit of the same story for Garland. If he falls far enough, then all of a sudden now you say, okay, well, it bounced too far the other direction.
Yeah, look where you got him too. Like right after Drew, it looks like, which is fine. I have Drew a little bit higher as well, but then there's DeRozan, Middleton. Yeah, like I'm taking Donovan over those guys.
I got it after those guys, by the way. That's going back the other way. Yeah, after Chris Middleton. So there Donovan was still kind of hanging out there. I'm like, all right, well, and we'll see how it goes when you get into a more public setting. You know, one of the things about an industry mock is everybody likes to either you did a little recon. Some folks are doing recon. Some folks are kind of grabbing interesting names just to
planting their flag.
Yeah, planting the flag, have something fun to talk about in the pod kind of thing. Like I'm looking forward to talking to Doc because he went with all fun here.
I got to talk to Doc about this draft too at some point. This dude told me like a month ago, I'm not taking Sengun, and here he is taking him in the 5th round.
Yeah, beginning of the 5th, no less. That's the second pick of the 5th round. So you got team fun over there.
Covert ops, I love it. Doc is the funniest dude.
Absolutely the funniest dude who keeps the most insane sleep schedule I've ever seen in my life.
Yes, dude, I get texts from him from like 3 a.m. and it's like
I get texts from him at 3 a.m. my time.
Yeah.
It's like 3 a.m. for each of us. I'm like, when do you sleep? He's like, I don't know. I take my kid to school and then I sleep in the middle of the day. I'm like, all right. Fair. I don't know how your brain functions. Mine's mush, and I'm sleeping overnight. So then here you go in the fourth round, which with someone who's sort of more traditionally a Dan Vespris guy, although there is a little bit of turmoil around where he ends up this year. The nice thing about Miles Turner, and I'll get his name in there before we talk about him, I've lost track of numbers here. I think this is pick 39, is that even if he does get moved to a team like the Lakers or whoever else might be in the mix, his role doesn't change that much. It's not like he was a high-usage guy in Indiana. He gets his value with a couple of threes, good percentages, and a crap ton of blocked shots.
Yeah. You want to know what's interesting, too?
Yeah.
So there's like 4 really elite shot blockers. So you got Miles, you got Gobert, you got JJJ, and you got Robert Williams, and 2 of them are out. So getting Miles sets you so far ahead of the pack block-wise that this value here in the fourth is ridiculous.
He might win you that category himself this year.
Yeah, and the Pacers are going to move him. There's no question about that. We don't have to worry about him staying put. He's on a contract year. If the Pacers let him stay, he's walking. Right? So they're going to move him at some point. There's already an offer on the table, apparently, according to Shams, for the Lakers. So anywhere Miles goes, he'll slot into a 28-minute role, and he'll get you 2 to 3 blocks a game.
Yeah, easy. It's a clean single. All you need to do is have him stay healthy, and I think if he ends up on a contending team, you don't get that like, oh, Miles has got like a sore forearm, and he's going to sit out 3 weeks.
Yes.
That, by the way, reminds me of
injury.
Like the late era big dog Glenn Robinson. That was I don't know why that sticks in my head so much, but I remember playing fantasy sports whenever the hell he was getting on in his years. I feel like it was like around 2005 or 6. And
Before
he
I
was
born.
yeah, and he was constantly out with like irritated arm. Like, okay, so I don't know what's going on here, but we need better medical work. Like, what is it exactly that's irritated? Does he have like, did he get poison oak? What's going on with the big dog, right? So, yeah, we called him the big dump at that point. And Marcus Camby was another one who was out with 9,000. I like reminiscing a little bit. We're talking about Roto World here. This is the big dog Roto World blurbs of 2005. Your fifth round pick. This is, and actually, by the way, people are going to think I'm going to get crazy here, but those that have been listening to the shows over the last 2 or 3 weeks know that the fifth round is actually when I've started telling people to take some hacks because of the way players are listed this year. And you can pretty much blame it all on Yahoo's X ranks because that kind of creates ADP. All of the old man value guys are mushed into the top 40 or like the last 80, basically. Yeah. And in the middle, the old men are just that. They're just kind of old. They're not fun old dudes in the middle. So this is a great spot, 5th, 6th, 7th, maybe even 8th, to actually start taking some hacks. And so you went Devin Vassell here towards the end of the 5th round. Without being too crazy, his upside is almost unlimited this year.
Yeah, so here's the thing about Vassell. If you were in a hometown league, right, you could probably get him 3-4 rounds later and no one would say anything. But like in an industry league, he's so hyped that this is kind of where you have to take him. Does it kill like the value? Yeah, it does. But I really wanted him here and I wasn't happy with the players around him, right? Because Desmond Bane was off the board and Terry Rozier was off the board. So I took him in the 5th. I think that's roughly where he finishes the season. But so in terms of industry versus hometown, if you're in an industry, this is fine. But if you're in a hometown, you can get him 3 rounds later and win your league.
Yeah.
I think he's that good. And I have pulled up a stat for him. With DeJounte Murray off the court, Vassell had a per 36 line of 16.6 points, 6.3 rebounds, 3.4 assists, 1.5 steals, almost an entire block, and 2.6 triples. Those are early round category numbers, and that is a massive sample size as well, too. So we do worry about what he looks like as like the number 2 option because there's obviously a lot more defensive pressure on you. But in terms of just theoretical upside, we get a player entering his 3rd year. I'm in, right? I think he's going to be massive in fantasy this year.
Yeah, I like. I know that there's tank. I don't want to say worries. I think we know that they're going to tank in San Antonio.
There's tank worries for 10 teams this year, just because of the Wembanyama mistakes. So
absolutely, but this is a Roto games cap mock. So if you get 60 games out of Vassell before they start resting him 2 out of every 3, it still could work there. I kind of feel the same way. I don't like that the shoulder injury stuff on Keldon Johnson, but I feel somewhat similar He was a top 50 guy at the end of last year.
Yeah.
And DeJounte was still there at that point. So I don't know.
Absolutely.
Anyway, you took another swing in the 6th with Franz Wagner coming off this just colossal EuroLeague performance. Are you at all worried about Orlando having, well, I guess we should say that, the number 1 pick in the draft, and kind of incorporating him? Does that give you any pause on Franz? Based on the 6th round, I'm guessing the answer is not really.
Zero, none. We looked in the preseason. This is going to be team length. They started Wendell, Bamba, and Paolo together. Like, they don't care. They're going to run some weird lineups. It's a rebuild year. They might as well tank again. I think Wagner could potentially be their number 1 option on offense this year.
He should be. I think he's probably their best
worst,
offensive
number
player.
2. Yeah, at worst. So this is a guy that, honestly, I guess sound like Collins Collinsworth. This is a guy who can get you production in every category. I'm hoping he takes a small step defensively, but man, he could take 18, 19 shots a game and no one to bat an eye.
Well, you went another Orlando guy in the that's kind of why I slowed myself up here, because then you have Paolo in the 7th.
I wasn't happy with this one, by the way.
Okay, was this an auto?
This was, I think it was an auto. It was kind of a panic pick because I had Jaren locked up because in previous mocks, I saw him going 8 or 9, and now he's going 7 because people know I'm in here. So that was frustrating.
Yeah, Rickling, we talked about that with Alex on last week's episode, that he, Alex was saying that he actually tried to warn you in the 5th round that he was going to go JJJ soon. And so when he was there in the 7th, he was like, well, I got to screw Jonas now. You did get him back, by the way, in the next one. So what you're saying here, basically, and we don't need to go into more detail, is that if you had this back, you probably wouldn't have gone Paolo here.
I would not have gone Paolo.
All right, screw
it. My kind of philosophy, I would say. That sounds so stupid. My philosophy, I don't really draft rookies anymore. That's something new with me.
Welcome!
Yeah.
Welcome to this lovely circle. Let me give you, hold on, let me just get this bag of Werther's Originals for you. Here, I'm going to open them right here live on air.
You got any peppermint?
No peppermint. I don't, screw that crap.
But yeah, like I'm focused almost exclusively on 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year players that have shown that they can hang in this league. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, especially the ones that have
a good mixture of old guys too. A good mixture of old guys.
Oh man, Jonas, this is crazy, man. I don't even know what to do with this information. I feel like
it's my heart. You're right. I mean, I've had more success adding in a couple of old timers in there, just to balance things out.
It's a good segue to your 8th round pick because you did this to get Alex back, also because you like him, and that's Big Al, who, by the way, I think so. I believe this happened. Did this happen after the Time Lord news broke? Because I know Jared took Robert Williams before it, but then
this happened just before.
Okay, just before. Because this is, this is an amazing spot to get Al if the news had already broken.
Yeah, there's no chance you're getting him round 8 in a hardcore league with this Robert Williams news. Because if you look at Horford's per minute production at the 5 compared to the 4, it's like a 4-round jump in value.
Behemoth.
Like Horford is early round at the center spot, and there is nothing. His competition is Luke Cornett.
Yep.
And
so non-existent.
Horford realizes that. So he said he took the whole offseason. He's best shape of his life, which we hear that from everyone. But he said he wants to play back-to-backs too. It's like he's ready. He's going to feast.
I'm going to have Horford on every single Roto team on the planet. I mean, he is the poster boy for the Dan Besbris Old Man Squad. He was last year also, and now his role is even more secure. I like to try to clump the last 4 rounds together a little bit. I have this running philosophy, I'll use that word also, that right around pick 100 is where you really have to start picking either upside or floor. And before that, you can find guys that have both. After that, you're kind of going one or the other. And so your last 4 here are actually all really interesting. I'm excited to hear your take on them. Onyeka Okongwu in the 9th, Okongwu in the 9th, Jared Vanderbilt in the 10th, Patrick Williams in the 11th, and Jaden McDaniels in the 12th on Atlanta, Utah, Chicago, and Minnesota, just in case folks forget where some of these guys might be. I mean, I get it's a big question to just sort of lob all those 4 names out to you, but it feels like, well, maybe I'll start with this. Did any of these guys get autoed, or were these guys in your crosshairs? They feel like they were probably in your crosshairs based on what I know about you.
Yeah, so my last round philosophy, again, there's that word again, is pure upside. For Okongwu, last year he was a 95th percentile in the pick and roll. And now he has two of the best pick and roll players in the NBA with his team, DeJounte Murray and Trae Young. Like the Atlanta Hawks media day might as well have been the Onyeka media day. That's all they talked about. They're like, let's put the ball in his hands. Let's extend his range out to the 3-point line. It was all about Okongwu, and Capella is probably just in the background like, all right, what the hell? So, yeah, I'm excited about him. I think he starts by, let's say, January, right? Because they got to prop up Capella's value just so they can dump him off to some other team that needs a big man. My next pick, I think Vanderbilt is going to feast. Now, one thing that people don't know about Vanderbilt is that he's actually an amazing playmaker. I think he had like 6 assists in that preseason opener. He is really good playmaker, and the Jazz need one, right? And we already know what he can bring defensively with like one of the best steal rates at the forward position. And he's also, I think last year had like the 7th best total rebound rate. Like Vanderbilt's a stud. Not worried about Laurie because they're going to play Laurie at the 3, which is awesome for Vanderbilt as well. So yeah, Vanderbilt in round 10. Come on. I'll take that all day.
And they could slide those guys up, too. Walker Kessler, the young center there, I mean, they're going to need he's really green. And then the other center, as much as I love my guy Kelly Olynyk, and he might start for a little bit, the long-term plan in Utah is not to give Olynyk 30 minutes a ball game. Exactly. So you could see potentially Vanderbilt chew up a couple minutes at the 5. You could see Markkanen chew up a few minutes at the 4, which only helps bigger guys. Get him closer to the rim. You get better percentages, you get a few more rebounds, all that good stuff. Absolutely worth the flyer there. Patrick Williams, he's an interesting one. I've heard a lot of different. I guess my hesitation on him is, will they let him shoot enough times to cover up? Like he does a lot of the other little things well, but like you got to have a little bit of usage, and it's tough to find it in Chicago.
Well, usually during the summer, you'll hear like the name of a player that has just been blowing everyone away in like pickup games and stuff like that. And the crazy thing about it is this year it's been Patrick Williams. There was a live 5-on-5 run. I don't know if it was Rico Hines or something like that, but there was a live 5-on-5 run with like DeRozan, Evan Mobley, and all those guys. And Patrick Williams was the best player on the floor by all accounts. They said he was the number 1 guy on offense. I think they were just trying to expand his game, but he was ridiculous. Pull up threes, step back threes, all that good stuff. His shooting stroke was already good last year. It's improved even more. He has defensive upside, one of the best shot blocking forwards already. We saw that towards the end of last season as well. Once he got his athleticism back, man, those last 5 games he was clicking. And then my last pick, I'm even more excited about my last pick. There was a puff piece in The Athletic about Jaden McDaniels. Every single player on the Timberwolves were like, yeah, Jaden's going to be unbelievable this year. They said he's grown to like 7 foot. They're going to play him at the 3. They have extremely big expectations, and I've never seen a player hyped up by the Minnesota media like they have Jaden. You would think that the hype would go to Anthony Edwards. It's been Jaden. Jaden,
dang.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. You got 4 really interesting late round selections here. Normally, I ask the guest if there was anybody else that they were targeting in this range, and I guess I'll ask you that too, just because. But like the fact that you didn't have any autos and kind of got some guys that you were looking at already makes for a very interesting chunk there. And they are upside plays. The floor could fall out from any one of these dudes or all of them, but who cares? Once you get past pick 100, like getting a small win doesn't help you that much in a fantasy league. Like if you're drafting at 115 and you get the guy who's number 107, who cares? That guy's like a good streamer option for most 12-teamers. But I will ask it just because you're here. I've got Jonas on the show. I'm going to ask him. Was there anybody else in that range that you were looking at that someone else snapped before you could?
Yeah, Doc hates me, so he took D'Anthony Melton in the 10th. I had him queued up, ready to go. I think Melton is going to be top 50 this year. He's going to cakewalk his way to top 50. I'm calling it again. I'm going bold. He is free from Taylor Jenkins.
Yay!
I'm so excited, man. They've been running 3-guard lineups in Philly. Melton has been a standout at training camp. The stars have aligned for a 28-minute role. And
man, I hope you're right. God, I hope you're right.
People forget he was like 8th round last year with everything working against him.
Yeah.
8th round.
It's right. And he was, and
people were still complaining about him, by the way. He's like, oh, Melton's such a bust. I'm like, dude, he's playing 21 minutes in 8th round value.
So here's the thing. I think, and I don't like, I don't want to make it seem like anybody's getting called out here. I
Yeah.
think that a lot of folks play in leagues where if someone like a Melton last year is a great example of this, if he has like 2 to 3 weeks where he's not playing as well, they can get away with cutting him and getting him back. But if you're in a slightly more competitive format, you can't do that. Like, I had questions last year about dropping Big Al in the middle of the season, about dropping Mo Bamba in the middle of the season. I get it. They're slumping, but these guys were hovering near the edge of the top 50 for months.
Yes.
You can't drop a guy like that just because they get cold. Now, with Melton, it's a little bit less of a severe example because he was like, 70-something range when Dylan Brooks was out, and then he'd fall outside the top 100. But he'd keep getting back and forth, and he did ultimately land as a nice, especially totals, value. But yeah, you're right. I think some of it is format dependent, and that's where you get that pushback. But if you're in...
It's the Robert Covington dilemma. It's it's like 3 years ago or something like that. Covington missed like his first 24 3-point attempts or something like that.
I remember.
People were dropping him. And then that's the year he finished top 25.
You got it. There has to be some patience. You have to like understand what your league is like. And if you're in a slightly less competitive league, or maybe it's one where if you're a head-to-head league where there's like only one IL spot and you have 2 guys hurt and Melton's in a deep slump, okay, like I get it. Like you can't take terrible numbers for 2 weeks or your team falls out of the head-to-head playoff picture.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's not... You can't do a podcast, you can't do a tweet, you can't do an article that applies to every league all the time. You have to sort of tailor it to a certain type, and so competitive 9-cat is kind of where we're at. Guys like that do belong on rosters even through little slumps. So a little bit of patience goes a long way. I understand the cutthroat side, I really do. It's certainly more in head-to-head than in Roto. Roto, you can just stick a dude like that on your bench until he warms back up again. But anyway, I got sidetracked there, as I typically do. Jonas, you're the man. We got it. I say it every time. I got to do this more often with you, and then I screw it up. But I also really do need to let you get back to your day. So,
well, at least we're in the draft tomorrow together.
That's right. I can't wait. The Roto World / NBC Sports Edge draft. Oh, man. Thank you guys for having me in that. That's always a blast. He is at Jonas Nader on Twitter. He is the man. I love talking to you, man. Let's do this again soon.
Absolutely, Dan. Thanks for having me, buddy.
You heard it, guys. Jonas put a couple of old dudes on his team. Even in a mock draft, he did it. We're rubbing off on that guy, which is probably terrible news for him. That if Dan is rubbing off on you, you're in for a long week. I'm going to try my damn hardest this year to create time in my own calendar to get Jonas back on this show regularly. He deserves a spot with as many things as he's done with us over the years. And frankly, he's a great listen. You guys are always going to learn something when we talk to Jonas. Coming up the rest of the week, we got Matt Stroup on the show tomorrow, also at Roto World NBC Sports Edge, host of the Round Ball Stew podcast. And then the big dog himself, Arf Arf, Aaron Brewski, will be our Friday edition. Very excited to kick off a year of Brewski guest spots on the podcast. He's been pretty beat up the last couple of years. He's still a little bit beat up. But his kiddo is 3 now, which means there are, I guess naps probably went away, but we'll get him in there. Don't worry. We're going to have Brewski weekly shows throughout this season, just like the good old days. You guys remember those. I know you do. This time, we're going to talk to Brew about the first round. We'll talk to Brew about the second round. We'll talk to him about some late stuff. You guys know I always bash him until he gives us one gem out of the B150 on this podcast. I'll just hammer him until he does it. He knows it's coming, so he can prepare himself as much as he wants, but I'm going to get him with it anyway. And then as the season progresses, we'll talk about kind of what's going on in the NBA. You know, I always have my pickups and drops stuff for our end-of-the-week type shows. But guess what? We're going to do some live ones. We're going to bring the Brew shows back to live on YouTube, so we'll have some kind of Fantasy NBA Today overtime, or whatever shows are calling it these days, where we'll take some questions. Those will be not this coming one, not the show on Friday of this week, but as we get into the season, we'll do some live shows as well. And I think that's all I wanted to tell you guys about today. Big welcome back to our 3 sponsors for this year. We'll have more information on those hopefully as soon as tomorrow. Manscaped.com. Back with us here on Fantasy NBA today. Thrive Fantasy will be a partner of this show as well as our DFS podcast here at Sports Ethos. And ExpressVPN.com. They'll be back with us this year as well. That partnership starts on Monday of next week. So really excited. Welcome back to our three sponsors. Super awesome that they are ready, willing, and able to come on back. I think for Manscaped, this is going to be their third year in a row that they've been with us. ExpressVPN, same deal. Thrive, this will be year 2 with us here on the pod. Extremely grateful to those guys. But again, I'll bore you with that stuff. Ha, he says, tongue-in-cheek. On tomorrow's show, I think as soon as tomorrow. I am Dan Bespris, at Dan Bespris on Twitter. Big thank you once again to the great Jonas Nader, at Jonas Nader on Twitter. Projections. Points League ranks. B150. Incredible features. Draft guide, fantasy pass at sportsethos.com. Get it now. All the good stuff is going in there. A lot of it's in there already. You will not regret it. Have a wonderful, wonderful Wednesday, everybody. Oh, by the way, thank you all for making yesterday, Tuesday, the most downloaded day this offseason and one of the top 4 most downloaded days on this podcast of all time, where the other 3, by the way, came the week before the season started last year. So I'm looking forward to an even crazier bump next week. Let's keep it going. Thank you all for listening. It's been a hell of an offseason so far. We're coming down the chute now. 13 days until basketball is in front of our faces. You know, games that count. Remember, preseason stuff, you're looking for health. You're not looking at rotations yet. The starters are not playing full minutes, but keep an eye on it. Okay, we'll pull anything out that seems interesting. Don't worry. With that, see you tomorrow.
Tired of long waits and rushed care at the ER and urgent care clinic? Next time, stay home and let Dispatch Health bring the power of the hospital to you.
I call Dispatch Health. A care team of medical professionals actually come to your house.
They're the same caliber of people that you would see if you were at a hospital or an urgent care.
Dispatch Health can treat most non-life-threatening emergencies.
They can do the x-rays, they can do stitches.
Urinary tract infections, blood test, urinalysis, ultrasound.
It's almost everything that they can do at the ER.
You never feel rushed. They're there for you and only you.
I felt like their only patient.
And it costs no more than a trip to urgent care because Dispatch Health is covered by most insurance, including Medicare. See if we serve your home at dispatchhealth.com.
Dispatch Health really went above and beyond.
It's wonderful to have care come to your home.
House calls are back, and they're better than ever. Learn more at dispatchhealth.com.